Most, if not all, instinctual reactions are not only instinctual reactions, but can also be value choices. So, for example, something funny happens and you laugh. Sometimes it's not a choice to laugh, it's just a reflex action. We laugh. We're hurt by something causes us pain, and we shout out in pain. That's a reflex action. But these same reflex actions can also be value choices. One can decide to feel pained by something that another human being might be sitting right next to you and not feel the pain. You could see something which offends your most important values, something which undermines your essence, which undermines your neshama, and that causes you pain. You choose to feel pain because of your value system. You feel pain. If you didn't have that value system, you wouldn't feel the pain. So it's not a reflex action. It's a values choice. You can choose to laugh at something, to find something amusing, like the story of Rabbi Akiva and the other Tanoim who came to the Beis Hamikdash, and it was in the destroyed status. We learned on Tisha B'Av, and the others cried and he laughed. So it wasn't a reflex action to laugh. You're seeing the Beis Hamedrash in its ruins, the Beis Hamikdash in its ruins. It's not a reflex action to laugh. That was a constructed choice made by Rabbi Akiva based on his values and his beliefs. So we've got to understand what mastery of instinct is. Mastery of instinct is not just to be conscious of instinct and to sometimes control instinct, but it's also to realize that those instinctual reactions are given to us as potential value choices as well. And yesterday we began to deal with the issue of disgust. Usually we feel disgusted by something that is disgusting. You see something that's yuck and disgusting and you recoil from it, you're repelled by it. That's an instinctual reaction. But you can also choose to be disgusted. And there is a value in what you choose to be disgusted by. So you can walk down the street and you can see people behaving in certain ways or dressed in certain ways, and nobody notices. It's completely normal. And some people will look at it and feel disgusted. They'll find it disgusting. You walk around Tel Aviv, nobody's disgusted by the way people dress on the streets. But if a Yid from Bnei Brak comes, or a Yid from Mea She'orim comes, who's never been out of Bnei Brak or Mea She'orim before, and he walks through the streets of Tel Aviv, he recoils in disgust with what he sees. So the more refined you are, the more disgusted you're going to be by things that don't necessarily disgust the person who isn't as sensitive. Our sensitivity is a function not only about what we're attracted to. Our sensitivity is also a function of what we're repelled by, what we're disgusted by. And so we'll see in our sugya today, disgust is a values choice, רוצה, בקיומו, on Daf Samach Gimel Amud Beis Avodah Zarah. Says our Gemara, Yativ Rav Nachman v'Ula v'Avimi bar Papi. These three great Amoraim, Rav Nachman, Ula, Avimi bar Papi, were sitting. V'Yativ Rabbi Chia bar Ami Gabayu. And Rabbi Chia bar Ami was sitting with them studying. He was an intern. He was doing shimush. He wanted to learn from these three great Rabbonim. V'Yatvi v'Kol Mebaya Lehu, and he put a question to them, which is a projection from our Gemara yesterday. Yesterday we learned that not only if you sell an idol does the money become contaminated by the idolatry, but even if you work for in idolatry, or yesterday we talked about with Yain Nesef, the person's working in a winery that deals with wine that is used for Avodah Zarah, for idolatry, and he's paid for that work, the wages are also contaminated, is what we learned yesterday. The question that Rabbi Chia bar Ami poses to the three scholars is what happens if his job is to destroy the wine? If the owner of the yekev, the owner of the winery, hires the Jew, here you've got a winery, the wine is full of barrels of Avodah Zarah wine, of wine that has been used for idolatry. And the idolatrous owner of the vineyard says, there's an oversupply of wine, the prices are too low, I need you to destroy all of these barrels of wine. Break them, destroy them, get rid of the wine. So, he's been hired but he's been hired to destroy the idolatry, to do exactly what he's supposed to do, and he's getting paid for that. Isn't that a beautiful question? What about that money? So he's being paid for working with idolatry. Does the money get contaminated when he's actually doing a mitzvah? He's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to break it. Abed abdun. Mi amrina. So then he explains, and which is the way one should ask a question. You, from the way the Gemara records some of these questions, you learn how to ask a question. You don't just say, what is the din? You can ask that to ChatGPT. That's not the question. The question is, mi amrinan, do we say? So he gives the two sides. What is he struggling with? What's the dilemma? Kivan de רוצה בקיומו asur. Back on Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph, we had the concept of רוצה בקיומו, where a person wants the yain nesech to exist. He doesn't drink it, he doesn't touch it, he doesn't worship it. He just wants it to exist. It's in his interest that it doesn't get destroyed. So do we say here also, since he gets paid for the number of barrels he destroys, if somebody else, if a competitor came in and said, I'll destroy them first, I'll destroy every barrel that the competitor destroys, he gets less payment for. So he wants the barrels to survive until he destroys them. During those moments of wanting them to survive, is he over on רוצה בקיומו, on wanting their survival? It's such a beautiful piece of Gemara. Or Dilma, or the other side. Kol lim'uti tifla shapir dami. The fact is, what is his job is to undo the Avodah Zarah. He should be rewarded for that. He's doing a mitzvah. Yes, in order to do the mitzvah, the wine has to exist for a few minutes, otherwise somebody else will do it. So he wants to do it himself. What's so terrible about that? He wants to do the mitzvah. Omar Rav Nachman resolves the question and says, Yishbor, he should go ahead and break the barrels, v'tavo alav bracha. Not only can he enjoy the payment he gets for it, but he should have an extra bracha for diminishing the amount of idolatry in the world. So Rav Nachman resolves the question. The part that I want to focus on is the Havamina, which doesn't get pushed aside in its essence. The Havamina, the original assumption is רוצה בקיומו asur. That if one wants Avodah Zarah, if one wants idolatry to exist, even just for a few minutes, that desire for it to exist is asur. You're not allowed to desire that. And that could prohibit the results of that desire, in this case, the wages. Now, it so happens we say, no, the wages are not prohibited because of the fact that he's actually going to destroy the yain nesech. But the concept of רוצה בקיומו asur is still there. Rav Nachman doesn't say, no, there's no such thing as רוצה בקיומו asur. He says, no, you're right. Normally, רוצה בקיומו asur. If a person wants this Avodah Zarah to exist, that's a problem. However, here, because ultimately he's destroying it, it's okay. Asks the Chassam Sofer back on Daf Lamed Beis, Ha dipshita lerabotenu de machshevet רוצה בקיומו asur. This that we see from Chazal, from the Gemara back on Lamed Beis, and our Gemara here, that there's such a concept as רוצה בקיומו asur, that if you want the Avodah Zarah to exist, even temporarily, you're committing an avera, you're transgressing something akin to idolatry itself. That fact that the mere thought of wanting it to exist could constitute an issur, could constitute a transgression. Lo yadati min aleha. I don't know where they get it from. Where does this come from? You're not serving the idol. You're not doing anything. All it is, you're saying, this is a nice idol. I'm enjoying it. I'm looking at it. Whatever. I'm going to destroy it in a couple of hours' time, so I hope it doesn't get destroyed before I get to it. What are you doing that's so terrible? It amplifies Rav Jibli's question that we asked yesterday. Why is Avodah Zarah so terrible? Hashem, not only does Hashem take exception to the whole concept of Avodah Zarah, but look how far it goes. You've got an individual that simply says, I want to destroy this, but not right now, and that might be an issue. Says some say, I don't know where it comes from. So our Tosfos says, our Tosfos also struggles, this is actually on the next daf, on Daf Samach Dal, on tomorrow's daf. Tosfos also struggles with this. How can a thought, particularly according to those who say that lav she'ein bo ma'aseh, that if a prohibition is not acted upon, if it's not an active transgression, there's no malchus. But here we have a shita of Rabbi Akiva that there is malchus, that you receive lashings for a case of רוצה בקיומו. How can that be? Asks Tosfos. And Tosfos answers, Mikol makom machshavto meshavye le ma'aseh. His thought is deemed an action in this particular case, Kivan shu oseh ma'aseh libasof, because he does do something at the end. It's not just a thought. If it was just a thought, he walks past this idol and he thinks, nice idol. I hope it lasts a while. I would like to come bring my family to have a look at it, so I hope it's still here tomorrow. That's not an issue. But if he lands up destroying it, that's an action. And that action attaches to the thought, and therefore the thought is not just a thought. The thought has a dimension of action to it. And therefore the dami lemekayim, it's more than just wanting it to exist. It's being mekayim. It's actually sustaining it. Since your thought entails action, that thought is enough of an action to be considered almost the same as sustaining avodah zarah. So if you've got an idol that's about to collapse and you come along and you fix it, you repair it, you reinforce it, that would be mekayim avodah zarah. You can't do it. You didn't create it, you didn't build it, you're just reinforcing it. That would be mekayim avodah zarah. You're not allowed to do it. In the same way here, this thought which attaches to an action is like mekayim avodah zarah. Difficult to us, but that's what he says. And it leads the Chassam Sofer to say that if that's the case, then lichoira haya nireh delo amru ela beisur hana shemetzuveh leva'er min ha'olam kamo avodah zarah or chometz bepesach. Then this concept of רוצה בקיומו would be an issue by avodah zarah and by chometz on Pesach, because in both cases there's an obligation to destroy. So the Chassam Sofer's understanding of the Tosfos is, where there's a mitzvah to destroy and you want to sustain, and there's an action involved in that sustaining. In our case, the action is a distraction, so Rav Nachman pushes it aside. But imagine the action wasn't sustaining. So, for example, the cases that are discussed on Daf Lamed Beis in Tosfos is you've got a bowl that has been used for chometz. So you're not using it on Pesach for food, but you put fruit in it on the table. The fruit's not absorbing, you just put the whole fruit, you put apples and oranges in it. So what's wrong? The apples and oranges aren't being contaminated by the chometz, which is absorbed into the sides of the bowl. But what could be wrong, says Tosfos, and there's a discussion with Rabbi David Lapin, is רוצה בקיומו. It suits me that this bowl is around, because I can use it. And Rabbi David Lapin rejects it and says, because it's not physically evident, it doesn't apply. But you see from that discussion that this idea of רוצה בקיומו is not specific to avodah zarah, but applies to any case, as the Chassam Sofer, where there's a mitzvah that you have to destroy. If the Torah says destroy, and you say, one second, not just yet, this is actually serving a purpose. Meanwhile, that's a problem, because you're countering the mitzvah to destroy. Very difficult to understand. I struggle with it a lot, and I wonder whether Rashi is saying something very different. Let's look at the words of Rashi carefully. Says Rashi, this is also on tomorrow's page, on Daf Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Aval yain nesech de asur lihayot רוצה b'kiyuman. Yain nesech, it's not because there's a mitzvah to destroy it. There's an issue to want it to exist. That's a little different. Why? The Yisrael mitzuveh levatel avodat kochavim. Because a Jew is obligated to nullify avodah zarah. Note the use of the word in Rashi. He does not say that here there's a case of biur mitzvah leva'er avodat kochavim, as Tosfos says. He does not say there's a mitzvah to destroy avodah zarah, and he's countering that. He says there's a mitzvah levatel. Levatel is also an intellectual mitzvah, isn't it? So it's a mind mitzvah. To say this avodah zarah is no longer avodah zarah. If an idol worshipper says about this idol, there's this huge Buddha worth millions and millions of dollars, it's also. An idol worshipper comes along and says, magic, this is not also anymore, this is not avodah zarah, this is art. Okay, done, it's not avodah zarah. But you haven't destroyed it. This is not about biur, says Rashi, this is about bitul. You've got to destroy avodah zarah with your mind. You've got to get rid of it with your mind. It's a little bit like bitul on chometz b'Pesach. So maybe he agrees with the Chassam Sofer and with Tosfos on Daf Lamed Beis that it applies by chometz as well, because the main mitzvah with chometz is not to destroy it physically. The main mitzvah is to destroy it with your mind, to destroy your ownership. Another way to do it, and for various reasons we prefer it, is to burn it. But really, bitul, the real way to be mevayer chometz, is to be mevatel with your mind. Says Rashi, that's what's similar to chometz b'Pesach and to avodah zarah. The mitzvah is bitul, because, and here He's doing the opposite of bitul. To sustain, to want something to exist is the opposite, you being over the mitzvah of not being mevatel it. And that if you look at the psukim, if you look at the posuk in the Torah, v'lo tavito eival beitecha, v'ayita cherim kamohu, shaketz teshaktzenu, v'ta'ev teta'avenu ki cherimu. You've got to take an emotional position on Avodah Zarah. This is not a mental, this is not about an intellectual position. It's not about being cold and clinical. It's about being disgusted by it. You have to be disgusted by it. And when the Torah says you have to do something, you know this choice. The Torah cannot be mechayev you to do something you can't choose to do. The Torah is not mechayev you to do something instinctual or not to do something instinctual. The Torah is only obligating you to do values choices, things you can choose to do. So you see from here, the principle with which I opened up is that disgust is not only an instinctual reaction to something repulsive. Disgust is a choice. This repels me because of my values. This repels me because of my belief system. When I see people dressed this way in the street, it's repulsive. When I hear people use this language, it's repulsive to me. I choose to be repelled by it. What a magnificent idea. We choose what to be disgusted by. Ta'ev teta'avenu, you've got to be disgusted by it. Says this for why? Because yacharim et sha'an nechasecha. You've got to see that Avodah Zarah is infectious. It contaminates. If it was just something you saw in the distance and there's a disgusting thing, you're either disgusted by it or not. But to see a virus, to see an ugly virus, imagine the COVID virus, imagine if it was big and visible. Imagine if it was as big as an elephant. Imagine if it was big as ants and you could see it on the ground and they were crawling all over the place and infecting people and you could see it with your eyes. You would be disgusted. That's Avodah Zarah. It's a virus. And you've got to see the virus. That's what yacharim means. It's going to destroy your other property if you absorb it into your assets. You've got to see the contaminating, infecting effect of Avodah Zarah. You've got to see the contaminating, affecting effect of people who don't observe tzniut. You've got to see the contaminating, infecting effect of people who talk with nivul peh. It's not just they've done something. It's introducing an infectious disease into society, and it's disgusting. And we're obligated to feeling that disgust. And that ties to the Rabbi Yonasan Milunil that we talked about yesterday, where he says there's nothing else other than Avodah Zarah is mo'is ka'avodah zarah chayai nesech. These things are disgusting. And that's why there's this kind of issue. So unlike Tosfos, I'm suggesting Rashi is touching something very unique to Avodah Zarah. And yes, maybe to Chometz Pesach for the reasons of Bitul, but our focus is on Avodah Zarah. Rashi actually uses the word. It's about there's a mitzvah levatel avodat kochavim. He doesn't say wherever there's a mitzvah to be mevatel. This is a din in Avodah Zarah. It's based on ta'ev teta'avenu. And the Sephorah, and it's supported by the Shita of Rabbi Yonasan Milunil, that the essence of what we've got to feel and the way we respond to idolatry is the disgust when we see something as eternal, infinite, and unquantifiable as Hashem put into a little box. That is disgusting. To take Hashem and put him into one place, to take Hashem and give him dimensions, to take Hashem and cage him into a restricted area, into a restricted place or time, and say that is God. That's something which we find disgusting because it leaves the rest of the world vacuous of God. And not only do we have to reject it, and not only do we have to destroy it, but emotionally we have to choose to be disgusted by it in the way we respond.